Hello, welcome back to the channel. If you want to use Lovable and Iterating to build AI apps that can be used in warehouses and factories, you found the right video. My name is Samir, I'm supply chain data scientist, and over the past 12 months I have shared multiple AI workflow automation using Iterating that you can find in my creator profile. The common points of these automations, like this one for inventory cycle count, is that they are using basically Telegram, Slack, or Teams as a user interface. But for some customers, it can be an issue, and they wanted us to develop some applications that could be used on the cell phones of their operators. And this is what we have developed in the Lovable app. Basically, it's an app that could be accessed, deployed in the customer system, that could be accessed by any operators. And here we can implement some automations that can be powered with AI. And this is what I'm going to show you here today. How I developed that using Lovable and Iterating, and how you can do it very easily. So the idea here of this app would be to be a kind of a super app with multiple modules. The first module is the cycle count. So you arrive inside a warehouse, and for instance, you have like thousands of locations, and you want to check that the number of pieces or boxes that you have in the location correspond to what you have in the system. So what you do is inventory cycle count. As you can see on the right, usually you use a spreadsheet where you will list all the different locations. You will extract in this column the numbers of pieces or boxes that you have inside the system, and then the operators are supposed to go to each location to count, to do the check, to check that if it's correct, if the amount in the system is correct or not, and note the actual quantity. What I saw in my experience is that most of the small and medium-sized operations, but even like large companies, they do that manually. So they print this form, and then the operators goes location by location and note it. Here, the idea was to digitalize this system, and this is what I showed here. The initial solution was using Telegram, but one company was complaining, saying, I don't want to use Telegram, I want to have a specific web application that is deployed on my cloud. So what I did is I developed this app. So let's imagine that you arrive as an operator, you select the inventory cycle count feature, then it will load the map of your warehouse with the different locations. This is directly connected to this spreadsheet. So here it's written checked. That means it has already been checked. So A1 here is A1 is already checked. Here on the left, you have the system quantity. On the right, you have the actual quantity. And basically what the tool will do is it will keep read all the locations that you have to check. So here, the next location is K5. As an operator, you go to the location K5. Location K5, 12 units. So the operators state the name, pronounce the name of the location, say how many units it has counted, and then the backend will process the message, update the quantity, and let me just put the zoom back and show you the complete cycle count. So here it was the latest location, so you have the complete cycle count. So how I developed this app, this is what I'm going to show you in the next section of the video. So here is the first step that you have to do. So you have to transform your Iterating workflow that is Telegram-based, Slack-based, Teams-based, whatever based, to a kind of a backend. And for that, you use the Webhook. So the Webhook is a node that enables us to connect your to basically communicate between your workflow to any front end or back end via HTTP queries. And that would be the first gate to your workflow, to your automation. But important thing is then, so this is the input, what would be the output? And the output now, instead of being messages that you send to Telegram, it would be answers that you send back to the front end that will query your Iterating workflow. And this is what I did here. So here, instead of saying a message, go to the first location, I have mapped the field response with here the value first location. So the front end will know that basically when you receive this type of response. That's the first location. And here are some information of how many locations are remaining, what are the next locations. So this is the kind basically of mapping that you need to do. So instead here of talking to a human via Telegram, you will talk to a front end. So you need to remap the complete workflow. So for each different scenario of steps, you know exactly what type of output you are providing. And then based on this new set of processes, you can explain to Lovable how to interact with this backend and ask Lovable to create a front end that will be associated to that. And this is what I'm going to show you now. So now that the workflow is ready, you would think maybe it's time to go to Lovable, but no. First, we need to make sure that on our side, the specs are clear, but also we have specifications that are ready for Lovable. And for that, you don't want to interact with Lovable because you will spend credits. You would better do that with Claude. So what I do usually is I create this kind of folder where I put the N8N workflow that I have, that I just copy and pasted from my instance. So that way Claude can read the workflow and understand exactly how the webhook is interacting with a potential front end. I provide some assets that I will also upload in Lovable, so like my logo, what I would like, the example of the layout. And then I ask Claude to prepare a kind of a comprehensive README document, Markdown, that I will use to prompt Lovable. And what do I have here? First is just a kind of a general introduction of what the tool is doing. To be honest, I found it quite useful to give that to Lovable because it will adapt also the visuals and the layout, the graphic choices based on the business impact and the business usage of your tool. Considering that usually Lovable is using Claude on the backend, is pretty smart in taking this type of decisions. Here I explain how the workflow is working. Then you provide the links, so how to interact with your workflow. So you provide the two links, the test and the production URL. Why? Because you want to be able to easily switch from production to test when you are debugging with Lovable, and all the different assets that you have on hand, and then how the workflow is working. And here it's more from a technical point of view, what kind of output it should expect. And here this has been partly generated by Claude, because Claude will know from the JSON document how, based on which query, which output will be received by the front end. And here you have like a comprehensive document that provides all the different scenarios. I will not enter into details, what type of responses you get. But then what is important is how do you expect Lovable, the front end, to react. So here I show how I want to see the warehouse layout, how I want to integrate with the users, and based on the data received, what I would like to see in terms of front end. So for instance, in the demo that I did, at the end, you had this kind of a comprehensive list of all the locations that have been checked with the actual quantity and the system quantity. This is one of the behavior that you want to have Lovable, and this is what you can explain in this document using Claude. This is what we call like the counting panel, I think. And in the end, you provide, so this has been generated by Claude. I don't know if I have, I have used that on how to build the layout. So how I use this document on Lovable, let me show you that. Now, if you go on Lovable, so this is the first interaction that I had. So what I did is I picked some information from the README document that was generated by Claude with the business logic, how to interact with the backend, some graphical information like about the coloring and everything, and a bit of business logic also. And you see the last paragraph of the over UX that I want, and I share that to Lovable. At this stage, at the end of this step, I would say like 80 to 90% of the job was done. So if I go back here, At that time, the app looked like this. So you didn't have like the home button. The grid was not exactly what I expected, but it's okay, it's visual. The only thing that I discovered, and this is probably one of the issues that you are going to face, is I needed an additional API query to extract the information to build the map, because on the Telegram bot, you don't need to have the map because what you provide is only the next location. But here I wanted to have this visual map. So I adapted my workflow to add an initial query where I would fetch the data from the Google Sheet and share that to the UI. So here we are able to see what we have in the map. And I don't know if it's here. No, not yet. Let me see. Increased number of grids, code edited. Yeah, I forgot where it was. Date, location, remaining labels. I think it's this. Nah. Anyhow, so that's the type of big change that I did on the back end. And then for the rest, it's purely visual. So here, for instance, I added the way that we see the next location remaining. Then I ask here to narrow the aids to have something more looking like a warehouse layout. But if I would summarize the workflow for yourself on how to build these kind of solutions, first, take your workflow, adapt it to something that could be queried using the webhook. So consider that every time that you have a message to Telegram, Slack, you need to basically send a response to the sender. Then, when everything is done, send that to Claude so he can prepare a kind of a markdown document so you can use to prompt Lovable. Lovable will do a first shot, you test, you see what is missing, you adapt the workflow, and then the rest is just graphical. And here, I just extracted on GitHub this code, deployed that on my app, and it was ready, and I did the demo in front of you. If you have any question, or if you need inspiration on what kind of apps you can build based on the workflows that I shared on my GitHub, linked in the description, feel free to leave a comment, and see you for the next tutorial.